African Weather Service has issued warnings of heavy rainfall for Gauteng and Limpopo, but disaster teams remain on high alert. South Africa weather forecaster Lehlohonolo Thobela says people are disregarding the warning and continuing to drive over flooded streams. Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs has also urged South Africans to take the severe weather warnings seriously. Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa joins us for more on this conversation. Hlabisa, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. Already we're seeing flooding happening in certain parts of Gauteng, warnings issued for Limpopo and Mpumalanga as well. Let's talk about concrete emergency response measures that maybe the department has activated now because of what we're seeing with the weather conditions. Good morning.
Good morning, Arabile and the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. Indeed, we have activated our teams throughout the 9 provinces. As we are aware, especially yesterday, it was a heavy rain throughout the country. Of course, it has subsided in other provinces. I'm in KwaZulu-Natal. It was heavy rain yesterday, but today is a little bit at a very low level. Sometimes you can see the sun and it disappears. But as you rightly say, in other provinces like Gauteng, Limpopo, we are alerting our people to be vigilant. So far, there are no fatalities that have been reported. I've just received the report this morning. Yes, roads and low-lying bridges were affected in some parts of the country, but there is no severe damage so far, and we urge people to keep on being vigilant, observing, not crossing the rivers when they can't see the ground because they will put themselves at risk.
Yeah, have you been able to do any preemptive work for this rainy season? Because that's very important. It's something we know happens quite consistently too across the country, even if it heads to places like where you are in KwaZulu-Natal as well. So have you been able to do any preemptive work ahead of this rainy season to identify those high-risk areas?
The South African Weather Services update us constantly and long ahead so that we are alert. And as we are in the summer season, we are quite aware that it is the times of rain, and immediately when we receive the early warnings from South African Weather Services, we communicate with our structures to be on alert, as even in this case. And we thank God that so far we haven't lost any human life. And we urge our people not to be reckless, but to take the warnings seriously and obey the instructions.
Yeah, let's also talk about that infrastructure damage, though. There are some areas. We've even just been going to my colleague, Refilwe Soboko, who showed an area in which we had seen rapid decline of the land mass in that area because of the rains. Are there coordinations that perhaps exist between your department as well as some other municipal governments to ensure a rapid repair of certain areas and even public safety?
I am a chairperson of the intergovernmental committee that brings together all the ministers in relation to infrastructure, the provincial government, so that we jointly look at our response on infrastructure damage. We are on high alert, and our system is becoming more effective as we approach our readiness on disaster risk reduction.
Okay. Are you able to provide a breakdown when it comes to the amount of emergency funding that has been allocated to these weather-related disasters this quarter especially, and just how much has been spent to date?
Arabile, I would prefer if we can be given an opportunity to be precise so that we give a correct information in terms of figures, as well as where the money was spent, as well as also to reflect correctly on the medium-term review statement that was made by the Minister of Finance in relation to the disaster allocation, which will be a substantial money, which will have to look at fixing the damage of the previous disasters, including the latest one in Umtata.
Sure.
I can appreciate if we can approach it in that angle, Arabile.
Sure, and I'm willing to do so, but I'm just wondering, this, even if we're just talking budgets, for example, is there no funding that has been budgeted, or are we saying that we're waiting for the MTBPS before we have a budget allocation?
No, Arabile, there is definitely a huge sums of money that we released to municipalities in January, and the second tranche was released in March. Some municipalities haven't finished that money, which is above 2.1 billion in total. But there is also an allocation the minister indicated last week of about 4 billion rand, which is going to be splitted amongst the provinces KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, Eastern Cape, Limpopo, and Mpumalanga, and some part which might include Free State.
Yeah.
And a breakdown is exactly the one I'm saying.
Yeah.
I can appreciate if I can get an opportunity to be very precise, coming specifically for that item.
No problem at all. And I think the figures that you've given us were exactly what we were pretty much looking for in terms of allocation and budgetary compliance there. Are you able to talk to us about just the transparency and accountability in the deployment of those relief funds? Because that now becomes key question mark. We've had many question marks on this, especially in rural and low-lying areas.
I'm very open to transparency because we have said it up front that the municipalities that were given money in January and given money in March, if they have not used that money up to now, or if they cannot account how the money was used, or when we verify the projects, we don't find a project on the ground, we will not allocate further money on disaster management, but instead we will intervene through service providers in order not to disadvantage the community, because if you don't allow the allocation to go to a municipality, it is not councillors who suffer, but it is communities. Yeah. So now transparency is going to be the name of the game. That is why we publicly announced figures to make people know how much money was allocated in the municipality, and they must follow it up. And we will give a feedback that municipality A could not respond in terms of how money was used. We are not going to give any further allocation, but we will commission a service provider who will fix the damage for the benefit of our communities.
Yeah, that's going to be quite significant to be able to do too. Just your work maybe with civil society, local organizations to ensure that vulnerable populations are assisted, especially children, the elderly, disabled, not left behind during these emergencies and tough times.
It is one of the major themes that let us leave no one behind, especially the vulnerable groups, the children, disabled, elderly, and women. In all our activations and in all our engagement on disaster risk reduction, the message is in our response, we must ensure that the vulnerable receive a priority in terms of safety. And I am happy that our structures, the civil society, the municipalities, and everybody, this is the whole government approach in ensuring that the vulnerable receive our priority in terms of disaster risk reduction.
Yeah, Minister, it's a very important one, and I can imagine this has been something that is very difficult. Are we employing better technology in terms of mapping out these risk areas better for future understanding of what could happen, where the risks are, where the low-lying areas who need sufficient help are, and then measures to help those that are impacted and affected, whether it be by way of holds, emergency relief funds, etc. Are we able to do that a lot better with the technology that we have?
Indeed, Arabil, just 2 weeks ago, I was at Umhlanga, where we were focusing on using the modern technology, the drones, also as to how to alert communities in terms of bad weather conditions and how to ensure that the modern technology assist us even to discover people like Etumtata, Arabile. I was so sad that it took us days to discover bodies that were washed away during that disaster. But if we had drones at our disposal, some of the bodies who were just lying on an open area, we could have discovered them earlier. That is why now we are concentrating on the use of technology in advancing our response on disaster. Next year, we will be introducing in cabinet a reviewed model in terms of our response on disaster. It's a joint project between the Defense and CoGTA, the National Disaster Management Center, where we are bringing all available resources in the country, even in terms of technology, to be more responsive in terms of disaster risk reduction.
Yeah, a very important intervention to be put in place there, and one that will hopefully set forward some kind of help in this understanding of these weather patterns and how exactly we can help all those in need. Minister, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate you speaking to us this morning. The Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa.